Cinderella, wash this, clean that, you go to the ball, psh, as if. You probably know the tale, but did you know our sweet, unfortunate, too trusting cindery girl had much worse trials and ordeals in her older incarnations? Things, of course, get really gory in the Brothers Grimm tale, so, be warned, and in other tales, Cinderella has to overcome the near impossible. As always, it's so interesting to see what has changed over the years in tellings with different agendas and whatnot, so find a comfy spot, a comfy pair of slippers that aren't too tight, and follow me to uncover Cinderella's gruesome and grim past. Now, I have to say that there have been so many modern retellings of this tale like Ella Enchanted or Ever After, etc. I use Disney's as a reference point because a lot of people recognize it at a glance or are familiar with it enough through osmosis. Disney's animated story is based on the story by Charles Perrault, and for the most part, it's very similar to that tale with some minor exceptions. It also has elements of the Brothers Grimm, who, when they got a hold of Perrault's tale, because Perrault's tale predates theirs, of course changed things to suit their more, very grim tastes. Disney's tale starts off with a well-to-do widower and his young, beautiful daughter named Cinderella. That's her given name right off the rip. This is different than in most older tales. In Perrault, she has a name but is teasingly renamed Cinderbum by her meanest oldest stepsister, because after her chores are all done, she sits by the hearth in the ash to warm up and ends up getting cinders on her bum. The youngest, less mean one calls her instead Cinderella, like that's any better. Anyway, Disney's father, apparently only wanting to do right by his daughter, marries so that she might have a maternal figure in her life. And of course, because it's a Disney story, the good father dies within 2 minutes and 30 seconds of the animation, leaving Cinderella at the mercy of her new stepmother and 2 stepsisters. And their really mean cat, this thing is huge. They don't immediately put her to work, but they all constantly abuse and humiliate her as they squander the fortune on selfish fancies, eventually forcing her to take on the household chores. In good old Grimm, not only does Cinderella inherit a carpy stepfamily, but she is put to work right away. Her father does not die, but is also shockingly vile to her as well. Anyway, backtracking to the beginning. This Grimm tale starts off with Cinderella's mother on her deathbed. She tells her daughter to be good and pious, so God will always protect her. This reminds me of how Disney's Cinderella remains ever gentle and kind, despite all her family's abuse. Then the mother dies, and Cinderella visits her grave every day and cries. The rich father marries a widow with 2 daughters who are beautiful but vile of heart the following spring. He does not wait long. We know the story. Not only does Cinderella have to earn her keep by doing every chore, her stepfamily also strips her of all her beautiful things. This stepmother goes further and dumps the lentils into ashes so that Cinderella has to pick them out before she can eat. Yuck. Remember this detail, it is key for later tales. Disney's Cinderella always has a wish in her heart to guide her through the muck of life. Grimm's has no such dream, but just sort of resigns herself to her chore-filled life. When the rich father has to go on a business trip, he asks each daughter what she'd like as a gift. The stepsisters predictably ask for fine dresses and jewelry, but Cinderella very piously and sweetly asks, "Father, break off for me the first branch that knocks against your hat on the way home." Cool. He brings home the fancy things and a hazel twig. Awesome. Cinderella thanks him profusely and then rushes to plant it on her mother's grave, and then cries on it so much that it grows into a handsome tree. She visits it 3 times a day to weep. Poor sad girl, but this weeping under a tree thing does look familiar. And finds there's a little bird who always sits on the tree too, ready to grant wishes should she have any. And for all this miserable time, she doesn't? Anyway, this tree and bird are not a fairy godmother per se, but they are at least some friendly respite and perhaps her mother's spirit from beyond. I don't know, that's just my take. Like in every other tale, the king is holding a festival to find a bride for his son. In both Perrault and Grimm, this is a 3-day ordeal, and Cinderella is not allowed to attend, of course, because she is dusty and dirty. I mean, why not just let her shower too, like her sisters? But then, like in Disney, the stepmother is prevailed upon. Cinderella can go to the ball if she gets all her work done. But just the same, the stepfamily makes an impossible situation. Says the stepmother, "I have emptied a dish of lentils in the ashes for thee. If thou hast picked them out in 2 hours, thou shalt go with us." At least Disney's stepmother's tasks made sense, even if they were a bit asinine and terrible and redundant. Grimm's Cinderella is hopeful and calls out for the aid of her animal friends, kinda like in Disney. The good into the pot, the bad into the crop. 2 pigeons followed by turtle doves, and finally all the birds in the sky fly inside to help. Cinderella shows her stepmother the fruits of her labor, but unsurprisingly, the stepmother goes back on her word and gives her another task. separate 2 dishes of lentils from ash in 1 hour, then maybe you can come. Same thing happens again with the birds, and same thing happens again with the stepmother. Only this time, the rationale for excluding Cinderella is that Cinderella, 1, cannot dance, and 2, has no dress. And it's not like those grow on trees after all. Oh wait, but they do! Cinderella goes to visit her mother's grave or hazel tree / wishing bird and asks for a beautiful gown. Shiver and quiver, little tree, silver and gold throw down over me. And the little bird throws down a silver and gold embroidered dress with matching slippers. They are gold, not glass, but she looks stunning in this getup and rushes to the wedding. How she gets there, I'm unsure. There's no fairy godmother or pumpkin magic coach in this tale, although there is in Perrault. And it is worth mentioning that the fairy godmother in Perrault's tale does offer similar aid to Cinderella in the way of a carriage, which she makes out of a scooped out pumpkin, 6 gray dappled horses, transformed mice, the finest mustached coachman, transformed from a rat with the finest whiskers, 6 footmen, transformed from 6 lizards, and dresses made of silver, gold, jewels, and of course, glass slippers. So, same-ish materials, same-ish results between Disney and Perrault. Like in Disney, Perrault's fairy godmother also gives Cinderella a midnight curfew. However, in Perrault, Cinderella actually does interact with her terrible stepsisters at the ball. After she has gained the prince's favor and attention, she sits between them, makes polite conversation, and even shares the citrus treats that the prince gave her as a special gift. They are in awe of this kind, elegant, beautiful woman and make absolutely no connection that it's their stepsister. In fact, they rave about this gracious mystery lady to Cinderella at home in the following days. She plays it very cool and keeps asking about her. Oh yeah, she also picks out their dresses and does their hair for, of all things, she's a noted stylist with excellent taste. Okay, right, back in Grimm, once Cinderella arrives at this wedding, the prince sees her, dances only with her, and says, "She is my partner." And that's that. There's no midnight curfew for this Cinderella. She just decides she's had enough of the festivities for one night and books it home. He tries to follow her to see where she lives, but she hides in a pigeon house, which her father promptly hacks apart with an axe to see who this mystery woman was. She escapes out the back, visits her mother's grave, deposits the dress there, and is sleeping by the fire pit by the time the family returns home. This same exact scenario with the new wishing tree outfit, the prince dancing with her, happens the next night, only the dress is even more beautiful and she runs and hides up a pear tree like a squirrel. Her father hacks down the beautiful tree, but no lady is hiding there. She is, again, sleeping in the ashes. On the 3rd and final night of the festival, she has on the most stunning gown yet, and this time the prince has devised a way to find out who she truly is. When she escapes to go home, she loses a golden slipper, familiar? On the stairway because he has covered it in pitch. The shoe sticks, she runs home without it, and now he has the key to finding her. I wonder how many other people's nice shoes were ruined with this plan. He is not the brightest bulb, as we see when he is fooled not once, but twice when looking for Cinderella. He brings the ruined shoe to the stepmother and asks if there's anyone home who could fit this shoe. The mother and daughters are delighted by this, for both girls have beautiful feet. Problem is, they're too big, and as painful as this looks, it's nothing to what the Grimms have in store. The first daughter tries the shoe on, finds it won't go over her toe. How is she putting that thing on? So her mother hands her a knife and advises her to cut the toe off. When thou art queen, thou will have no more need to go on foot. So she cuts her toe off, swallows her pain, and goes to the king's son, who takes her for his bride, and they ride away. Only when they pass the helpful hazel tree and 2 pigeons cry, "Turn and peep, turn and peep, there's blood within the shoe. The shoe, it is too small for her. The true bride waits for you." Does the prince bother to actually look at the shoe and sees how much blood is streaming from it? Whoops, little mistake, maybe we'll learn. Psh. He takes her back home and the other sister tries on the now bloody and pitchy shoe. It's still too small, so same thing. The mother advises her to cut off a bit of thy heel. She does and fools the prince again. I will say these girls are dedicated. Anyway, the birds again have to remind him with the same song, which varies translation to translation, to actually look at the foot and check out that bloody stumpin' river of blood. That's not right. Like, how dense is this guy, and is he actually someone anyone wanted to marry? Survivalism back in the day aside. Now, I've always kinda understood where the stepmother was coming from. She was doing the best she could to survive and ensure her and her daughter's future survival. But the terribly cruel abuse of Cinderella is absolutely not acceptable. And while this foot thing is on a whole new level and makes her a little too desperate in my eye in this tale, what I really want to show you is how not much better the father is. Where in Disney and in some of the more modern tellings he is deceased, but his paternal love is strong. In Grimm's, he's there the whole time, letting his daughter be abused and misused and occasionally helping with an axe. But here's where the jerko really shines. When the prince asks, is there anyone else who can try on the shoe? He disowns his own daughter, saying, no, there is a little stunted kitchen wench which my late wife left behind her, but she cannot possibly be the bride. Note in other translations he comments how ugly and malformed she is too. Excuse me, and does that even matter? What a vile man! Get the heck out of this house, Cinderella! Finally, Cinderella gets to try on the bloody, pitchy, crusty shoe, and shocker, it fits. They set off for the palace, and as the prince and she pass under the hazel tree, the pigeons sing about how he has finally found the right lady, and two of them fly down and land on each of Cinderella's shoulders, never to leave. Wouldn't that get kinda awkward? I guess Disney Cinderella's animal friends do attend the wedding there though, and look, two birds. Popping back to Grimm's wedding, to which the two false sisters show up to in order to gain Cinderella's favor. Each one sits on either side of Cinderella, who herself is too nice, but her guard pigeons are not, and each bird pecks out a sister's eye. And thus, for their wickedness and falsehood, they were punished with blindness as long as they lived. The end. Happily ever after. Come on, they already lost a toe and a heel. Are they really the worst in this story? I mean, they certainly didn't help matters. In Disney, of course, no one loses a partial limb or eyes, but the cat Lucifer gets more of a comeuppance than anybody else in the stepfamily. Cinderella and her prince just sort of peace out. Perrault too spares the stepsisters from gruesome fates and does them one better. Cinderella, who was as good-natured as she was beautiful, arranged for her two sisters to live in the palace, and married them on the same day to two great lords at the court. She looks out for them after all of the muck they put her through. What a gal. I do see a lot of themes in this that Disney, based off Perrault and Grimm's, share, like the animal friends and helpers, the shoe as the key, the super fancy dresses, etc. I will say one of my favorite Disney parts is where the shoe breaks, but then Cinderella is just like, oh, you mean this glass slipper? I got you, fam. Classic. And actually, literally a classic. It's very nearly straight from Perrault. Although there's no broken shoe in this tale, Cinderella pulling out the exact matching shoe from her pocket pretty much melts her stepsister's brains. But can we talk about how Disney Yella's foot is half the size of the Duke's hand? Also, these yellow eyes? Why? But some differences between Grimm's and Perrault. In Grimm's, there's no time limit of midnight. Cinderella's just like, dude, I gotta go home, leave me alone, and scurries up a tree. Grimm's is also full of gory details, and there is no fairy godmother, but there is constant contact with the deceased mother, through the grave and the hazel tree. There's also a disowning, horrible father. But speaking of beyond the grave assistance, do I have something special for you? In our next video, we totally ran out of time on this one, sorry. Trust me though, you won't want to miss part 2. It also just so happens to be one of my favorite fiery fairy tales ever. So be sure to keep as many of these juicy details in your brain for our next adventure. And with that, friends and fiends, as always, thank you for joining me here. If you like what I do, please subscribe and click that notification bell and all that jazz so you won't miss when the next animation is out of the oven. Okay, I hope to see you soon. Goodbye!